He looked up from the hospital bed and whispered something no one expected. "Tell my brother. I didn't survive this." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even clear what he meant, but it was enough to silence the room. But before we continue, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because Prince Harry wasn't supposed to be there. Not like this. Not bruised. Not broken. Not fighting for something unnamed beneath pale fluorescent lights and a thin white sheet. But that's exactly where he was, just after midnight, rushed in through the back entrance of a Santa Barbara hospital, flanked by 2 aides and 1 visibly shaken driver. And Meghan? She was nowhere in sight. Let me ask you this. What happens when a fairy tale unravels in real time? When the carefully curated smiles, the multi-million-dollar deals, and the perfectly timed charity appearances suddenly feel like they're hiding something darker, something desperate? Because this story isn't about gossip. It's not about jealousy or betrayal in the usual royal drama sense. It's about a man, the spare, the soldier, the husband, whispering words that don't quite add up. About a moment that changes everything, even if no one wants to say it out loud yet. Something happened behind those Montecito walls. Something more than just a fight. Neighbors say they heard shouting. A woman's voice. Then silence. Emergency calls were made from a secure line inside the estate. One that doesn't go through the main switchboard. And then the message. Transport needed. Head trauma. Possible concussion. Unresponsive. This wasn't a panic attack. This wasn't exhaustion. This was something else. Now here's the problem. No official statement. No photos. No leaks to People magazine. Just absence. Silence. Control. And for a couple who built their brand on visibility, that silence is louder than any headline. So we have to ask, why now? Why is Harry, a man once so fiercely protective of his privacy, suddenly the center of a hospital whisper campaign? And why does Meghan, normally a calculated, camera-ready presence, go radio silent for 72 hours, only to post a photo days later in full glam, holding a coffee cup and smirking beneath oversized sunglasses? It doesn't make sense. Unless you already suspect what some of us do, that this isn't the beginning of the end, it's something far messier. There are rumors, whispers of an altercation, of a private conversation gone wrong, of a betrayal so personal that it didn't stay verbal. We're not going to throw around allegations carelessly. That's not what this channel is about. But we are going to follow the trail. Because right now, behind the palace gates and Montecito hedges, damage control is in full effect. The statements are being drafted. The aides are being rotated. And Harry? Well, he's still not home. Not yet. And what's most chilling? He made one last request, quietly, before being wheeled down that long, cold corridor. Not to Meghan. Not to the press. To someone else. Why didn't he ask for her? That's the question insiders keep circling, quietly, carefully, as if saying it too loudly might solidify what everyone's afraid of. When Prince Harry was loaded into that ambulance, reportedly dazed and barely conscious, his first request wasn't for Meghan. It wasn't even for a doctor. It was for his brother. And that, considering everything, changes the temperature of this story. Because what does that mean? Is it a cry for help? A signal of regret? Or is it the clearest confirmation yet that something inside that house snapped? We're told the ambulance arrived at 1:47 a.m. Security footage from a neighboring estate, never meant to go public, shows a man pacing at the entrance gate just minutes earlier. Barefoot, hoodie pulled tight, slumped posture. No one's confirmed it was Harry, but no one's denied it either. And it's what happened before that moment that has staff, former employees, even distant cousins, breaking their usual silence. One source, close to one of the Montecito staff who recently resigned, says tensions had been unbearable for weeks. Not just the usual bickering, not stress from media coverage or canceled deals. Something deeper. He called it emotional corrosion. As if love had become weaponized. As if every conversation came with a trapdoor. He said Harry had started sleeping in a separate room. That he was quieter, more withdrawn. He stopped going for his morning walks. Stopped texting friends. And then there was the phone call. This same source claims Harry reached out to someone in London the day before the incident. The call didn't go through official palace channels. It wasn't made from a royal secured line. But within hours, Prince William was reportedly in contact with a US-based security firm. The timing isn't just suspicious, It's nearly impossible to ignore. Which brings us to the night of the incident. Neighbors say they heard shouting just after midnight. A woman's voice. Sharp, frantic. Then another. Muffled. Thudding sounds. Then silence. One neighbor, speaking anonymously, said they debated calling the police but hesitated. You just don't want to get involved with that house, they said. But someone did call. It wasn't 911. It wasn't a personal assistant. It came from what's being described as an internal line, connected to a third-party security consultant hired 6 months ago, right after Netflix started asking questions about production delays. Which begs a brutal question. What kind of home needs that kind of line? And then there's the object. This is where things get murky. According to an unverified, but increasingly corroborated, statement made to first responders, an object had been thrown. Something heavy, something sharp, something that struck Harry near the side of the head. Now, we're not confirming that detail. Not yet. But we are noting that the hospital's intake report, one that was leaked in part to foreign press, lists impact trauma and acute disorientation as primary concerns. Not a panic attack, not dehydration, not exhaustion, trauma. And while Meghan's legal team has already issued strongly worded denials, they haven't addressed one specific rumor, the broken vase. A staffer claimed to have cleaned up something smashed in the hallway early that morning. Not the kitchen, not the living room, the upstairs hallway, near the guest bedrooms. Near the locked cabinet where Harry reportedly kept handwritten notes, letters he never sent, but reread often. Some addressed to his mother, some to William. Why was that cabinet open when first responders arrived? Why were its contents scattered? And why, despite a full cleanup by private staff, were tiny fragments of porcelain still found wedged beneath the floor trim days later? You see, stories like this don't explode all at once. They leak, they drip, they haunt. And Meghan? She left that morning in a black Escalade, wearing sunglasses and carrying what looked like a boarding pass. The SUV pulled out of the driveway minutes after the ambulance. No one's confirmed where she went. But there's a reason insiders are saying this wasn't just a fight. It was the fight. The one that breaks the pattern. The one you don't come back from. And what Harry said, before the morphine kicked in, wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was, reportedly, a whisper. He was shaking, said one of the EMTs. Not from cold. Not from fear. From something else. And what he said next, barely audible, wasn't meant for Meghan. It was meant for William. But the message never made it to London. Because someone intercepted it first. And that changed everything. Who would intercept a message meant for a brother? Unless they knew what it said could burn the whole house down. That's the thread investigators are quietly pulling now. Not the cause of the injury, not the location of the fight, but the message. What Harry allegedly whispered to that first responder, what he asked to be passed on to William, and who stopped it from reaching its destination. Because less than 3 hours after Harry was rushed to the emergency room, something strange happened. The hospital's electronic patient log, which routinely shows admission time, injury category, and attending physician, briefly went dark. Then, when it came back online, Prince Harry's entry was gone. Wiped. No record. No alias. No coding for private VIP. Just nothing. We know this because a medical technician leaked a screenshot. The tech didn't think much of it at first, until they realized that the name had been manually removed, not masked. That's not protocol. That's cover-up. And what's more alarming? This happened before sunrise, before Meghan even issued a statement. Let's pause on that for a second. Think it through. Harry's still hooked up to fluids. He's reportedly sedated. Unconscious. His condition unclear. And yet someone with access to his hospital file decides to wipe the system? Who gave that order? Here's what makes it worse. A few hours later, 2 men, suited, anonymous, reportedly British, arrived at the hospital requesting access to the secure wing. They didn't identify themselves as press, royals, or medical staff, but they were let through. The receptionist on duty confirmed the accent. One of them sounded just like a BBC anchor, she said, except he wouldn't give his name. Their visit lasted exactly 22 minutes. And when they left, a nurse reportedly noticed that Harry's personal effects, clothes, phone, and a small black notebook had been removed from the bedside drawer. Officially, it was logged as relocated for security. Unofficially, no one's seen that notebook since. Why does that matter? Because it's the same notebook Harry was seen carrying during the filming of his Netflix documentary, the one he called his memory ledger. Insiders say it held everything from therapy notes to draft letters. Private, raw, unfiltered. What was in it that made someone take the risk of removing it under hospital surveillance? Now here's where the story turns colder. Because while all this was unfolding in California, a chartered jet left Heathrow, unscheduled, unannounced. Destination? Santa Barbara. The passenger? Prince William. No press. No security detail in public view. Just William, sunglasses, duffel bag, and silence. He landed just after 4 p.m. local time and was reportedly taken to a private estate, not Harry's home, not a hotel, a secured property tied to an international foundation with links to the crown. He didn't go to the hospital. Not immediately. He waited. For what? We still don't know. And here's the question that won't go away. Did William already know? Had he already heard the contents of that intercepted message? Or was he there to see with his own eyes what the palace was only whispering about behind closed doors? It's not just a family matter anymore. Because while the palace says no comment and Meghan's team calls it all baseless fiction, there are now photos, grainy, backlit, taken by a hospital employee, showing Harry unconscious, bandaged, and pale. Leaked first to a small press outlet in Spain, then scrubbed. But not before screenshots were taken. And the diagnosis written at the bottom of the screen? Blunt force trauma to the head. Moderate swelling. Monitor for memory disruption. Memory disruption. But if that's true, then how did Harry know what to whisper? How did he remember that? Unless it wasn't his memory that was disrupted. Unless it was someone else's narrative he was about to disrupt. And the message he tried to send to William? It wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. But the person who got to it first rewrote the ending. What kind of person smiles publicly while their husband lies sedated in a trauma wing? That's what everyone was asking when Meghan Markle posted that now infamous photo, sunglasses, latte, a curated breeze in her hair, just 72 hours after Prince Harry was rushed to the hospital. The timing wasn't just odd. It felt deliberate. But it wasn't just the photo. It was the caption. 3 words, still standing strong. No mention of Harry. No reference to family. No context. Just an image so polished, it looked like it was plucked from a lifestyle brand campaign. And yet behind the scenes, something very different was unraveling. Because when the media teams finally issued an official statement, it didn't come from the royal family. It didn't come from Harry's own publicist. It came from Meghan's office. Just 3 sentences. Carefully measured. Chilling in their restraint. We ask for privacy as our family navigates a private health matter. The Duke is receiving care. No further comment will be made at this time. Not my husband. Not we. Just the Duke. Even longtime supporters, people who had defended Meghan through years of tabloid wars, paused. What was going on? A few wondered, had they already separated? Was this statement legalese covering for something messier? But others saw something else. A pattern. Because this wasn't the first time Meghan stayed silent when Harry was in visible distress. During that infamous car chase in New York, when Harry looked disoriented and shaken leaving the event, Meghan smiled at the cameras. When Harry lost his legal appeal in the UK and faced a possible tax residency crisis, Meghan posted photos from a garden party in LA. Each time, poised, detached, almost floating above it all. But this time was different. Because this time, there was no plausible deniability. Harry was physically injured, and Meghan wasn't at his side. Even her closest circle started cracking. Jessica Mulroney, once Meghan's closest confidant, unfollowed her on social media within 24 hours of the hospital incident. A podcast host who had interviewed Meghan 6 months earlier posted a cryptic tweet. Silence can be a power play, but sometimes it's just cowardice. Then there were the leaks. One audio recording, passed between journalists like contraband, allegedly captured Meghan on a call days earlier. In it, she's heard saying, he's made his choice. He wants to be the victim. Let him. Now, no one's verified the audio, but it's out there, and no legal team has denied its authenticity. Which brings us to the other leak, the one that sent shivers through media circles. A former staff member from the Archewell Foundation reportedly shared a private message Meghan had sent the day after the incident. A Slack message. 3 words again. This time, he'll be fine. Not, is he okay? Not, I'm scared. Just dismissive. Cold. Calculated. Here's the uncomfortable part no one wants to say out loud. If Harry was the one injured, why does it feel like she's doing the damage control? And more importantly, what is she trying to prevent him from saying? Because as Harry began regaining consciousness, as the sedatives wore off and the memory lapses narrowed, something else surfaced. A name.